Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Palmer. I'm really happy to be here again. I'm really happy that we're able to be here in person and do this again. So thanks, everybody, for being respectful and doing this in a safe way so that we can get back together. I'm excited to talk today about research. Specifically, I want to talk about doing research better together. And I hope to build upon a lot of the important principles that a lot of really great speakers have already mentioned earlier today and yesterday. Currently, I lead product design at a company called Range. Let me do some quick research for myself here. Will you please raise your hand if you are currently working remotely? Okay, got some remote workers. Okay, keep those up. And add your hand if you are working with someone else who works remotely. Anybody else? Okay, a few other people. All right, and let's put them all down. How many of you hold daily stand-ups or regular stand-ups with your team? Okay, just probably about 75 to 80%. Thanks, you can put those down. What we do at Range is we have tools, communication tools for hybrid and remote teams to make that process much less painful. I don't know how many of you have had a 30-minute Zoom stand-up run to 45 minutes, but we've got great tools that allow you to check in, to connect to the apps you're using, to share your mood, to connect and build with your team. And so if that's something that you do, it might be worth checking out Range. I've actually worked at 3 early-stage VC-backed startups in a row. That was not my plan, but here we are. And I've learned a lot along the way doing that, of wearing many hats and sharing lots of responsibilities. Currently, I'm on a team of 10. That's the company, 10. And so learning a lot about how to juggle different things and fill different shoes. And when you're in that mode, when you're thinking about research, it really changes the game for you. You can't disappear for several weeks in a row running a really deep research study, because that's 10% of the company gone at that point, right? And so you have to learn how to get these things going along the way. And something that I've learned in that situation is how to expand my influence through relationships and through partnering with other departments. And so that's what I'd like to do today. The format that I'll be using is the Mythbusters format, the early 2000s show that you may remember. We'll be holding up some myths, and we'll try and bust those together. And I hope you'll enjoy the 12 micro case studies that I'll be bringing to light to share with you. I'll need to move pretty fast to get through all 12 of those, but what I hope to do is expose you to a lot of different ideas and opportunities that you may have within your organization. So please be thinking about you, your own aptitudes, your team, your organization, and what that's like. And let's try and see if there might be opportunities for you to partner with other people and lighten the load of research in your org, because it's my belief that research is not just the responsibility of the UX team, but of the entire organization. So let's jump in. Our first myth: only my team cares about customer feedback. You may have felt this way. Some of you might think, Taylor, that's dumb. No one believes that. But if you are working in isolation and research, you may be behaving as if this myth is true. So let's try and bust this myth. I want to tell you about a team I worked with just recently at Range. We have a customer advisory group. If you haven't heard of that, it's basically a list of customers who have signed up to be extra engaged and give lots of feedback, try betas and early versions of your product, and be willing to be tapped on the shoulder pretty much at any point. And I was having trouble getting feedback from some customers for a new design that had just rolled out. And so I reached out to Sean. I knew he had this group, and he said, this is great. Why don't we send this out to our customer advisory group and see what we get back from them? So where I had been struggling to get customer feedback for about a week, after partnering with Sean, I got about 6 responses in about 24 hours, and then was able to start a rapport with those individuals and start working with them. I've seen customer advisory groups run in many different ways. Maybe it's just a monthly email that goes out to them. Maybe you send them your favorite branded socks. Maybe you fly them out every quarter on site with your team. And I've also seen customer advisory groups run by different departments. I've seen it housed under marketing, sales and success, or product. It can be run in many different ways. And so if your company already has this, and you're aware of it, or if your company doesn't have this, you might be able to spin something up and get something started. That's a great opportunity and represents another team who definitely cares about customer feedback and was willing to work with me on that. When I was on the team at Lucid, the marketing team cared a lot about maintaining positive customer relationships, obviously in the form of email. And so it could kind of jumble things up when a UX designer would come along and spam a bunch of customers offering them $25 gift cards because marketing was trying to keep their campaigns rolling as well. So we actually partnered with marketing, and they gave us some of their resources to route all of our outgoing communication through their email campaign tool, Marketo, so that it would actually blacklist anyone that we or marketing had contacted for about 2 weeks, so that we couldn't step on each other's toes, and we could keep kind of the channels open, keep the lanes clear. And because they cared about this, and they were willing to give us their time and resources so that we could both have a better outreach experience. Other teams care a lot about customer feedback. I'll also mention, oh, sorry, I was actually on the wrong slide for that one. I got backwards. So that was the story about working with that team with Marketo. I was approached by a member of the activation team at one of my companies, where the activation team was a set of individuals who would call and reach out to any customers who had begun signing up for our product but hadn't finished registering. And so they would come back with this rich understanding of some of the roadblocks facing our customers, and they would log it into our sales reporting tool, HubSpot. The head of this team actually approached me, and she said, "We're gathering all this information. What would you like to know? I could easily add a few questions into this report, and you could pull down that report, and you could use that for your own efforts." And I was in love with this opportunity because she had recognized that opportunity for partnership, and she had reached out to me, so I cannot take credit for this. But it was really easy to add in 2 or 3 questions, and then I could regularly pull reports from that tool. And it's like I had this constant flow of information coming. And it was a mutually beneficial relationship, especially because as we solved those problems that the customers were facing, in turn, more people finished registering. It lightened the load on that sales activation team, and we could continue to benefit each other in that way. So just a heads up, if you end up embedding within a sales reporting tool this way and you're not using that information anymore, save that relationship by letting them know that they can remove those parts of their process. Make sure that you can lighten their burden a little bit. But this whole myth that only your team cares about gathering customer feedback, I think we can go ahead and bust that one. There are lots of people around you who care, and it's worth reaching out to find who has tools and resources to help you. I am co-host of a little podcast called UX Chats, and we talk about lean research and stuff like this, how to do research more quickly and efficiently, especially with limited resources. And we had a guest on named Varun Murugesan, who was a researcher at Facebook and Best Buy and head of research at a little firm called Apple and Banana. We talked a little bit about this topic, and I'm just going to steal his words directly because I love the way he said it. He said, "The salesperson hired at your 2-person startup is having the exact same issues as you. Finding people from a participant perspective, your job is to persuade them and convince them that spending 45 minutes or 60 minutes is a good use of their time. The salesperson is doing the exact same thing." He was talking about this in the context of a little tiny startup. I would argue that this is the same regardless of the size of your company. Sales and success and support people are looking for those people to talk to. You are doing the same thing. Why not link arms and do that together? You share that responsibility. Let's bust another myth together, that research only counts if it's run my way, as if we were like, wearing safety glasses and pouring dangerous chemicals into beakers or something, right? Really, I think we can loosen up a bit, and we can embrace a lot of maybe unconventional methodologies for gathering research. Here's one that I really enjoy at my current company. This was there when I got there. Another one that I can't take credit for, but I've really enjoyed using. We have this kind of concoction of feedback that can be sent to a Slack channel that gets routed to Sheets, that gets picked up by a Zapier hook, that gets dropped into Asana. And that's not the most ideal way to log this research, but everybody in the company can submit that feedback through Slack. So we have co-founders, we have support staff, we have salespeople, we have design and product people, all submitting to the Slack channel, and it all gets routed to Asana, where each week we pick it up and groom it and consolidate it. And it's a little tacky to kind of put all of that together, but think about if there's a place where you can consolidate information in that way. Maybe you have access to Airtable or Notion or Dovetail or some of these more research-oriented tools. See if you can make that work for you, and see if you can get everyone to sign up for this. It's really cool to see the whole company contributing to this initiative because I am kind of the ultimate beneficiary of all of that data, and it's cool to work together with them. So see what tools you already have available at your disposal and see if you can make something work. Because we're a small team, I also got to do the support rotation a couple weeks ago. And while I was on support rotation, I was helping customers fix a lot of their problems, which it's great to hear about their problems. It's great to be on support and kind of observe the pulse of the company. And also, naturally, because I'm just a natural-born researcher, I couldn't help but want to talk to these people more. And so often after I would solve their problem, I would ask them if they'd be willing to chat with me more, to follow up with a call, and they were willing to do that. And so I've been able to chat with a few people now in this way. And if I'm able to do that, and I'm able to reach out and find research participants this way, why not other support people at your company? Why shouldn't they be able to identify someone that you might like to talk to and set up a call with them and send that invite to you? You might have to help them understand the criteria that you're looking for, maybe the specific issues that you're seeking or some of the specific psychographics that you're looking for. But really, this shouldn't be limited to just me when I'm on support duty. This is an opportunity, and I'll come back to this and talk a little bit more about it in a bit. I also had the opportunity to travel on site with the Lucid sales team to the Nike HQ in Oregon. A very important and foundational part of this trip was me getting the employee discount at the Nike store. So if you're able to go with your sales team to Nike, make sure you ask about that. I found the comfiest pair of running shoes I found since then. It's the 2008 free run model, by the way, or excuse me, 2018. Don't go later than that, 2018. And while I was there, sales would do trainings, and I could tag along and kind of listen to the questions that customers had. And as we met one-on-one with customers, I was like with them in their conference rooms and at their desks, watching them use the product. And I think sales really enjoyed having someone from product or design there, because I was able to answer maybe some of the more technical questions that they might not know the answers to. I could also share with them an upcoming glimpse of the roadmap and what my team was working on. You got to be careful with that. You don't want to overpromise anything. But I was able to say, like, yes, I can confidently tell you I have a teammate working on solving this right now. It'll be out in the next month. Like, we're going to fix this. And they love that, right? They love that relationship. So in my opinion, some of this can be a somewhat unconventional way to gather research. But if you're able to go and be with them on those sales calls, and now maybe this is just talking to customers over Zoom or whatever the pandemic version of this is, that it's totally worth doing. I don't think that going with them and traveling is the only way to work with sales, however. Sales, as you might know, also works with a set of tools. I mentioned HubSpot and how we were logging information in those tools. For a brief time on one of my teams, I got access to the tool Chorus. And Chorus records outbound calls from salespeople that can then be transcribed and tagged and commented on and shared. And this is a really great way to be able to pick up some of that early funnel conversation and to be able to listen on those purchasing decisions and what's stopping customers and what their concerns are. And so if you may already have access to a tool like this, or maybe sales has it and you need to ask for access or need to get a license or something. But figure out what their tool stack is and maybe where you can slip in and begin to consume some of that information. Not every tool that we use or pay for has to be like have the rubber design stamp of approval, right? It doesn't have to be Maze or Validately or UserZoom or one of those tools. We can use unconventional tools to gather insights that are just as valid. So this whole myth that research has to be run my way and that I have to control that process, I think it's worth letting go of that a little bit. I think it's worth busting that myth and instead allowing ourselves to gather research where it already is, go to it, and just begin gathering the insights that may already exist. When I think about designers who kind of silo themselves in this way, and I've been guilty of this before as well, I imagine it like this. Let's imagine that it's early in the year 2004 and there's a passenger on a plane. We'll call him Jack. So Jack is on the plane here, and he looks out the window, and he notices, uh-oh, there's an engine on fire on the plane, which is typically something that we try to avoid on our plane rides. And so he leans over and he mentions it to the flight attendant who's walking by, and she politely listens to him as he explains that there's an engine on fire. And she says, okay, thank you for bringing this to my attention. And then she moves along and continues passing out snacks to the passengers around Jack. Because after all, like, she's not an engineer. Like, she didn't make that engine. And she didn't design the plane, certainly. So she's just going to keep moving along and doing her job, staying in her lane. And can you think of a word that would describe this team? What scenario is this team going to be in before too long? This team who can't listen to their passengers, who can't listen to their customers, where there are these feedback breakdowns. I imagine that with this team, they'll probably have a pretty solid season 2 and season 3, but by the time you get to season 7, it's ultimately probably going to be somewhat of a letdown, and that team's going to be completely lost at that point. I don't think they're going to be able to understand what their customers need, and ultimately, I think that product's going to struggle to continue. By the way, I'm not bitter. You're bitter about Lost. I'm not bitter at all. Let's bust another myth. This is the last myth we'll bust together. This idea that I'm the only one who truly knows what to do with customer feedback. You may have felt this way before. You may have met people who felt this way before, that all that customer feedback needs to come to me or my team because we'll handle it. We know what to do with it. Let's bust this myth down. I worked with a cool team at Neighbor, and that team had embraced a lot of the philosophies around holacracy and self-organization. I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of these. Don't worry too much about the image. That's just a stock Google image result. But let me share with you some of the cool things that come out of self-organization. The basic premise of it is that everyone is responsible for deciding what they believe to be the most important thing to work on and where they can add value. That may even involve switching up roles a bit. That may involve shifting your own responsibilities to fill a gap that you perceive to be there. And so during our sprint planning process, our sprint planning was going around and each person stating what they believed to be the most important thing to work on and how they were going to contribute to that sprint. There are absolutely trade-offs to holacracy and self-organization, but one of the things that was really valuable to me that came out of it was we would invite a customer success representative into our sprint planning meetings. And she was able to go through a data dashboard with us that we had put together and relate anecdotally a lot of the calls that she had been on and a lot of the problems she'd been hearing about and a lot of the fires that she had put out. And it like relayed this sense of urgency to the team of problems that customers were experiencing and ways that the business was breaking down. And it really gave this fresh perspective to each team member about what our highest priorities were. Stephanie knew what to do with customer feedback. She knew exactly where we needed to apply our sutures, to pull from the talk this morning, and where we needed to fix some of these problems. So I loved turning to her. I loved including her in that planning process and finding people who knew what to do with the customer feedback. Another team I was on used to receive quarterly voice of customer reports that were assembled by the sales and customer success teams. And it would just come in as a spreadsheet that had been pulled from Salesforce data and a couple of other different places, and there would be these stack-ranked priorities mentioning which customers those issues had blocked and the features that were missing for them to close deals. And it was a really phenomenal way to be able to put it together with our product roadmap and say, where are the holes here? Where are we not covering some of these issues? And as we've talked about in Tyler's talk and as others have spoken about, this isn't the primary way to prioritize your backlog and to prioritize your roadmap, but it certainly should be an input. You should be aware of these things. You should know, especially if they're easy wins and low-hanging fruit and things you can solve. And if you don't have that data in hand, you can't use that as an input. So I was really happy to be able to pull this in each quarter and use this as a way to gauge maybe urgency and priority of some of those different features. Not to be blindly followed, but a good input. I was on a team with Matt Snyder, some of you may know, and he did a really good job of setting up design reviews with the customer education team. This was a team who would go on site and would train and do webinars and different things with brand new customers at different companies. And so they were just in constant new user onboarding mode. They just lived and breathed onboarding all day long. And being able to team up with them, we could show them kind of sketches and early designs and say, what do you think of this? Here's an idea that I had. And they could pinpoint, like, no, people don't look for things there. They look for it over here. I've seen them do it every single time I pointed out this feature. They won't understand that word. When I explain this feature, I have to use this word. And they had this vocabulary, and they had this mindset where they were constantly in the heads of some of our new users. And is this like a direct primary source of research? No, it's not. But we're taking off our lab coats, right? We're taking off our safety glasses here, and we're just considering what is there and available for us, and that we can use to spark the fire to get us started on many of our projects. Really valuable input from this team. They knew those customers, they knew how to give that feedback to us, and just regularly talking to them opened this channel where we would notice that they would also begin to reach out to us when they started noticing these things. We didn't have to come to them and hold our designs in front of them, but they would also start sending things our way. It becomes a two-way street. A lot of these teams begin to recognize that you're willing to open up and that you want their input, and they will begin to bring it to you. Relationships are so important in this situation. And so, again, be thinking about who knows what to do with this customer feedback, who's on the front lines, who understands these customers potentially better than you might even, and be willing to open the door to them. A last example I'll give here is an opportunity that I had early in my career, a very formative opportunity where product and design partnered with marketing. And we pulled in about 50 customers, and we interviewed every single one of them, like multiple-hour interviews with all of these customers for several weeks. And I've got some logos up here because we recorded them on Zoom, we transcribed them through Rev, and we threw everything into Google Docs and tagged and annotated it. And there are absolutely better tools to do this, but that's what we had on hand. And we came out with this massive volume of research, this huge data set of all of these interviews that we had done. And what was really cool was that at that point, product and marketing were on the same page. We knew the same things about our customers. And what we did with that information was form customer profiles and kind of targeted personas where we could then all start to move in the same direction and go after very similar customers. And that was really cool to have that level of engagement and that level of understanding where all of a sudden all the projects in the company started to align to these profiles that we had created. And we even handed a lot of this data over to sales so they could create training materials about what we had heard on those calls, about the way customers spoke about these problems and about the pains that they had and how our tools could solve those problems. I will say that this isn't a perfect way to do research. If you end up partnering with other departments this way, one thing that was a bit of a slog was the synthesis that came after gathering a lot of the research, where we spent a lot of time in the same conference room trying to hammer out the details of these profiles and where they intersect and where they don't. And ultimately, I think that we didn't really need to do that because marketing needed slightly different outcomes than we did, and we probably could have just stepped away and done our own synthesis and gotten the information that we need out of it. So it's a lesson learned. There's maybe some boundaries to be held where you don't have to spend all of that time with your partnering team, but there's certainly opportunities to put your heads together and put your resources together. And marketing became a team who knew what customers wanted, and we shared that with them. And the company began to become more customer-centric and have a better understanding of what customers needed. So this myth that only my team knows what to do with customer feedback, I think we can bust that one too. I think there are lots of other teams and departments out there on the front lines, and we don't need to build up those walls. We don't need to guard ourselves so much from the possibility that other people may even be in contact with customers more than us. I have to say that quietly because we're supposed to be user first, right? User-centered, user researchers. But I think that these teams can channel a lot of that, and they can route customers to us. They can share their insights with us. They can partner with us in determining a lot of those ideas and solutions and strategies that we end up implementing. So I don't know exactly what research process you use. I imagine if I asked you, it'd be some sort of colorful squiggle because that's what Google seems to think is a research process. But whatever part of that process you may be in, whatever phase or step or cyclone exists in your research process, there have to be steps and opportunities in there to pull in other teams. There have to be teams who have customer contact at that same phase, who have tools that you can use, who have processes that you can build into. And it's just worth reaching out and asking. It may be worth sketching out a quick diagram of how you do research and taking that around to some different teams and saying, here's what we're doing. Are you doing anything like this? Is there anywhere we could do this together? Like, we'll give you some of our stuff, you can give us some of your stuff, and build bridges, find ways to build those relationships and move quickly. You know, loosen up a bit and be willing to chase some of those opportunities rather than you know, building that ivory tower where we try and protect some of our efforts in that way. You'll know when this has permeated the leadership level, when you begin to hear leaders sharing ideas like this. I mentioned the other day that I had, a couple weeks ago, I was having trouble getting customers to respond to some of my outreach. I mentioned this in passing in a team meeting and just said, I didn't get any emails back. If anybody has any ideas, let me know. This is a picture of a sticky note on my desk because I was scribbling down ideas. I apologize for my hieroglyphic handwriting, but I'll translate it for you here. This was something that the CEO said back to me when I said that I hadn't gotten any responses. He said, you could ask support to mention it to the people that they're talking to. You could ask Sean to mention it at the end of the sales calls he's doing. You could push intercom responders toward Calendly and have them sign up for a chat with you. You could piggyback on Jen's calls because she's doing some research calls. And he parroted like shot for shot back to me a lot of these ideas that I had been thinking about and a lot of these ways that I was trying to work. And so I knew that he had ingested this, right? He had kind of consumed and was already behaving in this way. And so if you're able to push these ideas up to the top and begin to see even department heads and leaders meeting together in this way and sharing resources, then you know, as Jay mentioned yesterday, right, you've got that research mindset. You've found it and you've grasped something that will exponentially increase the velocity of each of those teams and the insights that they're able to draw out of their individual efforts, but doing more so together. I will add an asterisk here because every talk, every principle has an asterisk. Not every research project needs to be with another department. This is not some sort of absolute. Not every project needs to be done in this way. But I do hope I was able to surface and expose a number of ideas from my own experience that have worked for me and may or may not work for you depending on how your organization is structured or the design maturity within your company. But I hope this at least got the juices flowing and you're able to think through some opportunities that you maybe haven't pursued before. If you appreciated kind of this level of design principles and these ideas about lean research and how to move more quickly, I share a lot of ideas like this on a website I run called UX Tools that you're welcome to check out. We can chat more about that at another time. But I do want to end by saying that the best designers who I have worked with, the best designers I know, are not designers who come up with the best ideas themselves. They don't invent or divine the perfect solutions and the perfect designs. I think that the best designers who I've worked with are composers, they're coordinators, they're orchestrators, they're scroungers. They take the information available to them and they package it up into something that works. They take whatever they're offered and they are able to collaborate and they're able to compose that into a thoughtful solution. They don't have to be the originator of the idea. They just have to be the one that's able to push it out into the front lines where a customer can use it. And I think that those are the best opportunities and those are where we find some of the best in our field. Thanks.
Thanks. Hey, Taylor.
Good.
All right. We got 3 simple questions for you.
Let's do it.
Super simple. Okay. There's a common saying that some research is better than no research, but research done poorly can be very misleading. How do you balance the two in a scrappy environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think that ultimately, as I said, that research is the responsibility, that customer feedback loop, that research is the responsibility of the organization. But I think at the end of the day, the integrity of that research and your willingness to believe it and use it does fall back to the design team. I don't think that we can adjust any opinion that's sent our way, but we can consider it and we can position it in our understanding of the product and of our customers, and it's worth using as an input. But yes, research poorly done can absolutely can take down a product team if we're just confirming our own biases and we're not looking to at something objectively. So definitely something to watch out for. But I do think that we can develop the skills to separate some of that bias and that we can look at that information objectively.
Awesome. What is the best way to manage customer feedback when it's being given to multiple people and teams in the organization?
Let me think on that one.
I mean, you mentioned the tool that you kind of had one tool going into another tool that fed it all into Asana.
Yeah.
Is like centralizing.
So is the question, whoever this is, feel free to follow up with me. But if the question is, what is the best tool stack to manage that? Multiple.
Just how do you manage multiple inputs from multiple people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think you've got people, processes, or tools, right? You've got to solve it one of those ways. And so I don't think having a person be the central person to consume all the information necessarily works. But I do think that there can be processes where those can be logged in similar places, or maybe documentation opportunities. I think tooling is the easiest way to go about that. Probably the most straightforward way that I was able to do that was that HubSpot sales reporting that I mentioned, where it was built into a process that already existed. Those questions would just come up automatically, and people knew how to respond to them. But I do think that finding a tool and a process is probably the best way to do that.
Okay. How have you found ways to socialize these research tactics with others that you work with?
That's a great question. I think sharing my past experiences has been really helpful, and exposing that this has worked for me before. It is possible. I've seen it done. I think also breaking down what some of the problems are that your team is facing. If you're in a situation where you're consistently feeling like you don't have time to reach out to customers, or you can't find customers to talk to, then there's an opportunity there. And if you're able to show an opportunity to partner with another team, then hopefully people would be open to seeing that as a viable solution to some of those problems, and would be open to maybe slightly unconventional methods to solve that. But I think open and candid conversation can never hurt.
Wonderful. Thanks, Taylor. Let's give him another round of applause.